My genes are not blue. However, at the moment, thanks to my genes, I am sunburnt because my genetics are aggressively English. Hey there, folks. This is an interesting one to try and figure out a way to talk about. I suspect most of you have heard at this point about the controversy over an ad from American Eagle featuring rising star Sydney Sweeney. I'm going to say a couple of things up front. The first is, I don't really care about this. I don't care about American Eagle. I don't care about Sydney Sweeney. I don't care about the ad. However, I do care about the way people are talking about it, and more specifically, the backlash cycle that I am seeing so many people get trapped in. And it happens a lot. And I feel like this is a good opportunity to talk about why this happens and why it is a complicated thing to try and prevent. Because it's not as straightforward as I would like it to be. I am unfortunately going to have to talk about Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle a bit at the front end because we need context for stuff. Otherwise, this just becomes a hot take, and I try not to do that. Which is also why I didn't get this out sooner to when the whole thing blew up, which also means it probably won't perform as well. Whatever, I have stuff I actually want to talk about and points I want to make. But let's back up. American Eagle is a long-running American clothing brand. It has had its up years, its down years. It's not doing super great right now, but we'll come back to that. Sydney Sweeney is a rising star in television and film, and I have not seen her in anything. I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I haven't seen Anyone But You. I haven't seen Madam Web. I haven't seen The Handmaid's Tale. I haven't seen Euphoria. I haven't seen The White Lotus. This just isn't stuff that I'm particularly interested in watching. So her career is just running parallel to my interest. The twain do not meet. So that is just, I have no opinion on her as a performer because I've literally got nothing to go by. I already had heard of her. I knew like she was a big deal. I've seen her name come up in like, ooh, like the hot rising starlet that everyone is considering sexy at the moment. I was like, okay, so that's the one going on right now. We cycle through them every 3 to 4 years, sometimes a little less. Like that's all she was to me. Then she appeared in an ad for American Eagle, specifically for their jeans. There were a couple of ads. There were some print ads. There were some video ads. The video ads got a lot more focus, particularly the second and shorter of the two. But it is kind of standard jeans ad stuff, if I'm being completely honest. But there was some outcry by certain people who labeled it as dog whistling to MAGA and eugenicists. Some people calling it flatly
Nazi propaganda.
And naturally, after that all happened, the right started crying cancel culture. And then we have had the additional complications of it being reported by a number of places with some decent reporting reputations that Sydney Sweeney is apparently a registered Republican in Florida since 2024, which is, look, I'll grant you, that's an interesting year to decide to be registered as a Republican. Boy, howdy. But that's kind of the back end because that starts to get us into the cycle. While I am not going to give a definitive view on what is or isn't going on with these ads or what is or wasn't intended, I do feel like people are talking in overly broad and overly certain terms. Because a lot of the people who are bringing up lines like,
genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color.
Or just the general use of the jeans pun when using a blonde-haired, I believe blue-eyed, I didn't pay that close attention, white person in the current climate is at best a little tone deaf. And a lot of people, well, actually, possibly not a lot, I'll come back to that as well. Some folks are saying very deliberate attempt to appeal to some unpleasant notions.
It is a very deliberate marketing choice to create an ad about someone having good genes.
It's not just the eugenics of it all, it's how bad the ad is.
March out their hot white people to talk about how great their genes are. Yeah, that's massively fucking creepy.
Nazi propaganda. Wow.
There's a couple of things that people aren't really factoring in to their considerations, though, at least not that I could find. The first is, there seems to be a lot of assumption, both by those defending and those attacking this, that, oh, they know what they're doing. And like those defending it, it's a silly pun way. They know they're just making a pretty flimsy double entendre, and then the people who are attacking going, they know they're dog whistling. But both sides are very like, they know what they're doing. Look, here's something that I think a lot of us would do well to keep in mind. Corporations are perfectly capable of being very stupid. There is literally no reason why a series of small, innocuous, poor decisions result in something like this. Now, that's not me saying definitively that it isn't deliberately trying to do something. It might be. I have my own opinion on if it's trying to do anything. I think I might know what it most likely is. But again, we'll get to that. But like, corporations, while they unfortunately are the, end boss level villains of a lot of what's going on, they are not evil geniuses. Corporations, both the individuals in them and corporations collectively as entities, can be very stupid. Need I remind you of the Kendall Jenner Pepsi ad? Because that was not supposed to go down the way it did. You can go further back and just look at nonsense like New Coke. There was all this conspiracy theory that's come about since then that's all like, oh, they knew it was going to tank, so it would increase the sales of the classic because they're bringing it back. No, they lost a ton of money doing that. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to flop. But like people will retcon it, assuming that corporations are playing 5D chess. No, corporations are incredibly short-sighted. That's actually a huge part of why we're in the problems that we're in right now. They don't think long-term, and they act very impulsively and foolishly as entities. Now, do they actually have their own thought process the way I'm talking as if they do? No, of course not. These are decisions made by individuals, but because they are not always made by the same individuals, CEOs are not making calls about individual marketing things. Even the marketing team is going to be split up and subdivided. A lot of marketing stuff gets subcontracted to agencies. There are individuals making decisions for sure, but it is spread out so far that it is often more efficient just to discuss a corporation as a singular entity. And when you do, you have to acknowledge they can be quite dumb. There's the people who are claiming Sydney Sweeney definitely knew what she was doing, though.
Sydney Sweeney has a degree in business. She knows what she's doing, and she knows the brand that she is building. It is incredibly deliberate.
And that also strikes me as very odd and not really backed up by much. Some people will get into this whole, it's very infantilizing when you say she didn't know what she was saying. No, it's not that I don't think she didn't understand the words that she was saying. I think that she did what most celebrity endorsements do. She showed up, got paid an obscene amount of money. Like, you need to understand, most celebrities at her level get paid a lot more for ad campaigns like this than she does for movies or television. This is where a lot of the big money is. And again, to be blunt about it, most celebrities will say whatever you pay them to. Hey, Matt Damon, how'd that crypto ad work out? Larry David, same with you. Same with a whole bunch of people, actually. They will show up and say what they are paid to say because they are being paid obscenely well. Now, does that mean that it is impossible, that there is some insidious nature behind what is going on? No, it's not impossible. But let's keep in mind what a corporation exists to do. It exists to make money. Now, if this was done on purpose, I suspect it was done simply with the intent to stir up controversy, not to actually push the ideas that people are saying that it is propaganda for, but to stir up a certain kind of online personality in order to create controversy. And if that was the goal, it succeeded. Now, normally I don't like to position a controversy as being purposeful, because I think, again, more often than not, if you actually dig into it, most controversies for these companies don't pan out well for them. They tend to run neutral at best and are not actually something that helps them in the long run. But the thing is, American Eagle is in not a great financial position, or at least they weren't when this campaign started. They're doing a little bit better since it has started because their stock went up, and I don't want to get too much into that. But short version, as a clothing company, they've been hit hard by the tariffs, like most clothing companies have been, and they weren't on the best footing even before that happened. They are not doing well. And when you're not doing well, sometimes you pull the trigger on something that you might not do otherwise, like stirring up controversy on purpose. So if you were to ask me, is this on purpose? My inclination is probably not, but asterisk, if it is, I think stirring up the controversy is the point. I don't think it was actually intended to slip under the radar, because if this was trying to be subtle, it's not.
My jeans are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great jeans.
But then that's why I at least am inclined to think that it wasn't on purpose. Because people who are very plugged into the politics of the moment and are possibly a little bit terminally online, we can and will make these leaps and these assumptions of they have to know what they're doing. How could they not know? There's no way. Well, no, it's actually possible that they could not know. Now, I'm not saying that to let a corporation off the hook. Even unwittingly stumbling into this stuff isn't great. And at best, this does read as tone deaf to the moment with everything going on. So I don't disagree with that assessment, but getting stuck in the weeds of how much of it was on purpose, how much of it wasn't, did Sydney Sweeney know? The fact that she is been revealed to be a registered Republican, and by that fact alone, Donald Trump now loves this frickin' ad thing. Look, I would actually say it's slightly more concerning how sexualized it is, especially because it is very directly pulling from a very similar ad that Calvin Klein did in the 80s with Brooke Shields when she was 14.
Firstly, by selective mating, in which a single gene type proves superior in transmitting its genes to future generations.
Now, granted, Sydney Sweeney is not that young, thank goodness, but I'm not sure it was in great taste to invoke that either. But again, corporations are stupid. They can and will just look at what worked before, either for themselves or companies like them, and go, can we just do that? Can we just get a young star and stick her in jeans and have her make these double entendres? Yeah, sure. Is it successful, quote unquote? Maybe. But I don't really care. Because I want to talk about how it's been talked about since then. Because it has, naturally, been slotted into the culture war narrative with the idea that the left is condemning it, and the right is laughing at the left for it, and there are those on the left going like, how can you not see what I'm seeing? And it just goes round and round and round and round. Let's talk about the manner in which things like this blow up. And here's the first thing I want to bring up, and I kind of hinted at it before. It is difficult to know how many people actually believe that this is
Nazi propaganda.
Because while you can certainly find some people who are claiming that, especially on a place like TikTok, first of all, even talking about this stuff in front of a camera is performative by nature. And if you are on a platform like TikTok, attention is everything. And it is to your benefit to crank up basically anything you put on there just a little bit from what it is normally. Crank up how upset you are about something. Crank up how strongly you believe it. Because wishy-washy, middle of the road, or nuance doesn't play well in the algorithm. Take a stand and die on a hill. That does. Now, I'm not calling any of the creators who have talked about this particular thing grifters or anything of that nature. I'm just talking about the nature of a platform like TikTok and honestly like YouTube. It brings out the strongest version of what it is you think or feel, because that is more likely to land, connect, be seen, and be spread. The thing is, while these get shared frequently, trying to figure out how many people actually think this, it's very difficult, partially because TikTok's search function freaking stinks. But it's very easy for a handful of things to get shared so much that it seems like, boy, all these people are saying this. Like, are they? Or just a couple of people saying it, and a lot of people are talking about them saying it. If you're closer to my age, you probably remember this one. And if you're young enough that you don't remember this one, why are you watching me? But do you remember that it was a little bit of a headline that Japanese audiences thought the 2014 American-produced Godzilla was fat? Kind of made the rounds for a couple days, and people, gave their own pundit thoughts on that and how absurd it was or whatever. It's not that nobody ever said that. It's that there was one dude in a Japanese forum who said that. Hey, it's Vera during the edit. Minor correction on this. It wasn't literally one person, but it was one forum thread. There were a couple people talking back and forth in it, but it was one singular forum thread that just got all these Americans talking about how all the Japanese fans think Godzilla's fat. The extent to which we discuss anything can disproportionately give you a sense of its importance, size, and scope. That is an important thing to remember basically always. Now, I don't want to act like nobody was sharing this around. While I only found like a handful of sort of original pieces of people saying very strong things about the connotations of these ads, they were getting shared around a lot, and not only by people mocking them. Like, there were a fair number of people like who I knew sharing those videos saying that it was propaganda, which would seem to imply, though I am not going to automatically assume, that they agree and want to spread the message that this is what is going on. So I don't want to pretend like, oh, only a few people said it, therefore nobody believes it. No, like in our social media age, you spread a lot of what someone else has said, and it basically becomes a proxy for your own opinion. And not that this is the best metric in the world. When there was a YouGov poll about this, only 16% of people had a notable issue with the ad campaign. Regardless of what you think, I do feel that the conversation, which at this point is minimally about the actual ad campaign and is instead about the backlash or the backlash to the backlash, we'll get to that in a minute, it is disproportionate to the number of people actually saying anything. In trying to find B-roll for this video, I did not find much more than the stuff I've already shown you.
My jeans are blue.
And looking around a place like YouTube, most places are either not pulling any video from anyone who is claiming that it is propaganda, or they're pulling the exact same ones that I've shown you. On YouTube especially, I really struggled to find even a single video with more than a handful of views that was actually about the original campaign instead of being about the reaction to it. There are a handful of people who do feel this, but then major outlets and a bunch of other people, either agreeing or disagreeing, then spread those handful of people, and suddenly it's a massive cultural talking point. It's a jeans ad. But it's a massive cultural talking point, less so because people are talking about the ad than people are talking about the ad. Because the initial backlash was people pointing out that, hey, kind of tone deaf to have a blonde white person talking about how great her genes are passed down through the generations when we are dealing with everything that is going on in this country especially. Then there is the backlash to that backlash, which is the right-wing side of this particular equation, where you get a bunch of people like your Ben Shapiro's and just honestly your Fox News, any of your right-wing grifters, which I would include Trump in the ranks of, to be clear.
She's a registered Republican? Oh, now I love her ad.
He's the grifter in chief. They then mock the idea that this is all propaganda. Whether or not they think it is or isn't, doesn't matter. Like, not even to them.
I think it's good to expose the left for being totally insane.
It is to their benefit to downplay the very idea that anything could be eugenicist propaganda. Regardless of whether it is or isn't, downplaying the idea that anything is or that anything that is said by people viewed as more progressive than them, which is most people, is ever possibly correct, just downplaying that entire thing is to their benefit regardless. Whether it is for long-term political goals or whether it is just the immediate grift mill of having something to point at and go, ugh, stupid blue-haired progressives, look at them screaming about this. Here's the thing, though. While I find all of it infuriating in terms of how big this blew up, I'm not going to make the claim that we shouldn't say anything. I did wonder that for a little bit. I did wonder, like, should the point I arrive at in talking about this be we just need to not talk about this stuff? We need to let some of this stuff go because we have bigger problems going on, which, to be clear, we absolutely do. While this isn't the kind of thing that I would spend my time on if I wasn't making it part of a larger discussion, I don't feel like that's a productive thing either to tell people like, yeah, no, stop talking about that or anything like it. And here's why. For us to no longer call out the smaller, potentially accidental things done by corporations, done by celebrities, done by news media, etc., basically means that nobody is checking this at all. It does matter if you think you see something that's wrong, that people are going, hey, that's messed up. The video I did just last week talking about collective shout and the pushback that is trying to be done by groups like the ACLU against payment processors shutting down purchases of legally created and purchased adult entertainment. Raising your hand and going, actually, no, that's not okay. It does matter. And I would never discourage anybody from doing that. Not to mention the fact that if I push the idea like, we just shouldn't talk about this kind of nonsense, like the kind of messaging that's in a jeans ad. For me to say that also benefits the right because they want us to shut up. That's part of the overall thing for them. Like, don't get me wrong, the grift mill for these folks is very much a churn of content. If we don't do something that goes a little viral that they can pick on, they'll dig something up because that's their grift. That's what the Daily Wire and Geeks and Gamers and nonsense like that is all built to do, to try and dunk on the left as much as humanly possible. But did you hear me say, if they can't find something, they'll make something up? That's the other reason I don't think I'd ever tell people, hey, just don't bother talking about this. The simple truth is, while I would like the hyperbole to be dialed down a bit, but again, sort of the nature of platforms like YouTube and TikTok, people bring it up to 11. But as much as that frustrates me, even if every single person with a progressive or leftist opinion or view expressed it with maximum nuance, that still wouldn't stop the right from cherry-picking, misrepresenting, rewording, and mocking anything we point out. So while I don't love that, like, it's now currently a talking point of like, oh, look at the left losing their mind over jeans ads, at the same time, I know if they didn't do it over that, they do it over something else. I learned the hard way some years ago when I talked about Hogwarts Legacy before that came out. If they don't like you and what they believe you stand for, there's no wording you can do. There's no nuance you can bring. No matter how carefully you select your words, they will be twisted into something else. They just will be. And that should not be taken as a reason to not talk, because that is a win for them. So what can we do? What should we do? Well, I'd say the main thing is don't respond to the backlash of the backlash. And I haven't particularly followed too many of the creators who I showed you some clips of before to see if they have turned this into a continuing cycle of topics, but that's what I would like to discourage. Because I do think there is some value, not in massively focusing and definitely not in exclusively focusing, but I do think there is some value in pointing out the general cultural issues with ads like this, whether you feel the issue that it is calling back to a very pervy ad from the 1980s or the tone deafness of its general messaging at the time that is coming out, or if your problem is that she appears to be a registered Republican, whatever your problem might be, I'm not going to tell you you can't share what that issue is. But I do think what we should start to do, as best as can be managed, is when they call us idiots or snowflakes or overly sensitive or whatever, that we don't have to respond to. The thing is, the right's arguments, especially when it comes to culture war nonsense, it's largely in bad faith. And the people who are going to listen to them aren't going to listen to your rebuttal of their takedown. They're not. So who is it for? It just feeds the cycle, and it leads to small things becoming a distraction. Because again, I do think there is value in bringing up the small things. The small things add up. And if you ignore the small things, they add up to a larger cultural shift. And suddenly you get responses where people go, wait, how did this happen all of a sudden? And I have to say, it didn't happen all of a sudden. You weren't paying as close attention as you thought you were. While there's value in pointing this stuff out, it loses that value when you get stuck on each specific thing. It is worth pointing out.
Often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color.
This wasn't it. American Eagle. Don't like it. Fine. And when they clap back and they call you names and they scream cancel culture or whatever else, move on. Because if you respond to the backlash, once you're at that point, you're validating what they have said. Not in the purest sense. You're not proving them right. But by debunking it or arguing against it or any of that, you are granting it enough validity that it was worth responding to. And it's not. We need to get better at saying our piece and then ignoring them.
Supremacists are feeling so emboldened. An international organization and a very current star put out a supremacist campaign, and America didn't even bat an eye at it.
I think that framing it that way might actually embolden supremacists to be more vocal. But framing it as a company that had to walk back a stupid mistake because of public backlash, that signals to people that there's no tolerance for that bullshit.
I don't actually know how to end this video.
Yeah, it's gonna feel self-righteous if you back down.
At the time that I'm recording this, which is Monday, the week that it's coming out, the overall topic seems to be dying down, and I'm actually really glad for that. I want to see this leave the news cycle pretty quickly, because that might actually be an indicator of what I want, which is that we don't get stuck relitigating the same issue over and over and over again while new stuff happens, and then people start getting burned out because they're trying to still argue the old stuff while trying to deal with the new stuff, and that's not even dealing with the fact that this is ultimately small potatoes when we are dealing with far bigger problems right now. But again, the fact that larger problems exist, I'm not going to say that that is a reason to ignore smaller stuff. Sometimes smaller stuff is all you have the spoons for. I get that. And also, as I said, ignoring the small stuff too often leads to the small stuff piling up until suddenly it's a bigger problem. Those of us left of center. How far left you are, I don't know, don't care. But those left of center who the entire right will happily brand as radical progressives, we need to get a lot better at saying our piece and walking away. One of the frustrations of the left is a very lovely belief that if we can explain ourselves well enough, we can convince people. That's not really the case. Now, that's not to say we can't explain ourselves. We should. We should explain why these things that are going on are a problem, why these things that we could be doing would help. But once we start getting pushback, especially from, the far-right sources, we shouldn't be engaging with that in good faith because they won't engage with us in good faith. We unfortunately don't live in the West Wing, this fantasy liberal utopia where, yes, there is disagreement over policy, but if you can make your point, they'll have to listen. No, they don't. They don't, they won't. So make your point, and whoever was going to hear it will hear it, and then move the hell on. Because anybody screaming at you and trying to get further responses from you isn't interested in good faith, isn't interested in actual debate, and sure as hell isn't your friend. And it is my hope that the Sydney Sweeney thing will be more or less dead by the time this video comes out. And it is my further hope that these things can have a shorter shelf life and we can move on from them faster because they want to pull us into a fight that never ends. Because they don't have to win the fight. They just keep the fight going. That is to their benefit. Don't play. Say what you need to say. Make your point. Move on. I don't know if this will be helpful for people, but it helped me personally kind of solidify my own notions around this sort of thing. Because again, I think, staying silent even on the small stuff is not advice I actually want to give. But, just getting into a shouting match definitely doesn't help. It hasn't historically and it won't now. And I thought talking through my own thought process and using this as the most recent example, at least at time of recording, maybe people would find that helpful. Or maybe not. I don't know. I really, 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 really hope to get off political tinged stuff for the next video or next few videos or at some point. I'm sorry I keep covering kind of heavy and or frustrating stuff. It's what's been on my mind lately, and I do need to get this stuff out so that I can also move on and do something else. And even if it's more talking about the frustrations of the world. Anyways, I'm doing my best. I hope you are too. But whatever your feelings are about this, be respectful. I always ask that. But leave your thoughts down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon is how I pay the bills. It also would have gotten you early access to this particular video, if that is something that would have enticed you at all. But don't worry too much about that. Like, share, subscribe also help. But what I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. Don't worry, the rats are all fine, but my rat wrangler is not here right now, and I thought we could have Archie say hi. Or not. And yes, I do have bones on my earrings. Got them at a queer craft fair. I don't know, felt witchy. I like it.